Hello, Internet. Welcome to another episode of the Get Geek podcast. We're coming to you live this week. We're going to give you some of our favorite heroes of all time. But first, let's do some introductions. I'm your boy, Jose.
This is Wolfie.
AJ.
Eli.
And this is Walt.
Yeah. Welcome, crew. How's everybody doing today?
Doing well. Do want to give a quick reminder to everyone out there. Guys, we are still under quarantine recording, so bear with us as we try to make do with webcasting and all that stuff and not our usual setup. So,
Yeah, we're doing the best that we can while trying to stay safe, which I think is the most important thing that anybody can do right now. So, just a reminder, guys, like Wolfie said, we're doing a remote podcast this week, but we're still going to bring you the best damn content we possibly can. So let's get started. We're going to go around just to give you guys all an idea of how the format is going to go. We're going to go around one by one. Our name, our number 5, our number 4, our number 3, our number 2, and our number 1. And we're just going to give you a quick little mention of why our number 5 and our number 4 are on the list, and give you a little bit more information about our top 3 so you guys can get a little bit more insight into what our favorite heroes are of all time. So I'm going to get the ball rolling with a quick mention of my number 5 all-time favorite hero of all time. My heroes might be a little cliche to you guys, but that's okay. I like my choices. My number 5 is Batman. And the quick and dirty reason why is Batman the Animated Series. I grew up on that, an amazing cartoon, an amazing show, and Batman 1989, the movie with Michael Keaton. You put those two together, that kind of built a mythology for me around Batman that still lives to this day. Wolfie, what's your number 5, buddy?
my number 5 is what, in my opinion, is Marvel's sort of well. In my opinion, Marvel's Batman, which would be Daredevil. And the reason I
Nice.
say that is because Daredevil kind of has like this always on the border of being right and wrong and good and evil and stuff like that, and just kind of struggling with like not crossing that line and stuff. But I love Daredevil because of he's a straight up ninja. He doesn't have any superpowers. He kind of embodies that idea that like you may be different from everybody else, but what makes you different can be your power, so to speak. So I've always loved Daredevil because of that.
Nice.
uh AJ, you're number 5.
So I'm doing things a little differently. I'm going to start off by saying the way I structured my list is I looked up what qualities make a hero and sort of
Mm-hmm.
cross reference those with my own list of qualities.
Mm-hmm.
And based on these virtues, they're going to be in order.
Okay.
My number 5, and not going to lie, I didn't envision that a character from Dragon Ball would make it here, but hey, you surprise yourself every day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be Super Saiyan 2 Gohan from the Cell Saga.
Oh, is that the one that does
Ooh,
the one and Kamehameha?
Before that, anyway,
No.
so the reason why I chose him is for his compassion. In order to be a good hero,
I
you
see.
need to
I like where
have
you're going with this.
compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And he embodies that because the whole reason he even got to Super Saiyan 2 was because of his compassion for his compatriots.
Yeah, I like that. I like the way you put that. Okay.
So now what about you, Eli?
My 5th is actually quite the same as yours. From Dragon Ball. They're kind of like it's Future Trunks.
Okay.
Future
okay,
Trunks.
Future Trunks.
that's dope.
Future Trunks is awesome. Mm-hmm.
I don't know why he same as you. I looked for personality for my 5th one, and he just completely yeah. He has basically all of the qualities enough to make a spirit sword. So
That's
it's
dope.
pretty
Right on. Yeah. Future Trunks is
cool.
awesome.
All right.
uh yeah.
My fifth hero. My list is comprised of. So the way I did my list, I looked at all my favorite types of media and the things that I kind of gravitate to. And so my list is going to be maybe a little weird to some, but I'm going to go with it anyway.
Mhm.
My fifth liked hero is Ethan Hunt from the Mission Impossible films.
Oh,
The Tom Cruise, I guess, version of, or just in general.
No, the Tom Cruise,
Tom
because
Cruise, yeah.
yeah,
'Cause I
yeah,
think he was in
I
the
like
media
those,
before that, right? Mhm.
right.
Oh,
So I like those
damn.
films. And the
That's a
thing
good
that I
one.
like about him is that he finds a task, and however impossible it is, he always finds a way to get his mission done. And there's a lot of creative thinking that he does in all of these things, and some of the things that he does is a little over the top. But I just thoroughly enjoy his thought process on seeing a problem and just s- knowing that he's got to get to this point and he'll do
Mhm.
whatever it takes to get there. So that's my fifth choice.
He's a different type of hero from most movie heroes. I really actually like that choice. That's a really good choice.
Yeah, I respect that for real. That's a dope ass. That's super cool.
Right, and the great stunt that Tom Cruise does. So all right, I'm gonna jump into the number four, and I'll get that started. My number four is a Star Wars character, and it might not be the Star Wars character that everybody necessarily thinks of. It's a very big Star Wars character, though. And my number four actually is Yoda. And I mean, I guess I'll give you my thought process a little bit on how I broke my list down, so you guys can understand my personality a little bit more. For me, it's about memories. It's about remembering growing up, watching these characters, and like their thoughts and words sticking with me. And I always remember growing up when I would watch The Empire Strikes Back, because I was already old enough. Empire Strikes Back came back in 1980. I was born in 1980, so I was already old enough to understand some of the themes. And for me, Yoda was always awesome because I really loved his wisdom. Like I really enjoyed how wise of a character he was, and how like he was a pacifist, but he would still be passionate about his morals and about the things that he believed in. So that's why, for me, my fourth favorite hero of all time is definitely Yoda from the Star Wars saga. What about you, Wolfie? What's your number four character?
Since we're kind of talking a little bit about kind of like how our list is comprised. I've comprised
Hmm.
my list essentially based on uh like these characters that have influenced me and my personality and my being. Growing up and stuff like that. Like they say that you are who your five best friends are, and for me, like these characters are like my five best friends. Essentially, growing up, it's like these are the guys, these are the characters that I feel make up my ethos and stuff. So number four for me is gonna be Solid Snake, and
Oh.
Solid Snake was, it's weird because any one of these can be at the very top of the list, so it's kind of hard. That's
Hmm.
for me is almost like a five-way tie, to be honest with you. But Solid Snake is a character that, like, for me, he just got everything that needed to be done. He just got it done, no questions asked, and it didn't matter the situation. He found a way to get it done. He was basically, a stealth MacGyver, and that's kind of what I loved about him. I also loved the stories behind the Metal Gear Solid franchise and how it was directed and shot. So, yeah, that's my number four. AJ.
Um, it would seem that mine also comes from the Star Wars universe, but this guy is one of many of Yoda's many apprentices. And at number four, I have Luke Skywalker, embodying hope. So no, whenever I'd see at least the old trilogy, at least whenever this guy would come on screen, it's very rare that you ever see him down on himself. Maybe in episode five, there's a little bit of that struggle, but at
Yeah.
the end of the day, he's a very hopeful guy. I mean, he's the one who was basically able to bring his father back to the light side on hope alone. And just
Hmm.
that's another one of those qualities that I think is just really important when it comes to a hero. When it comes to heroing.
Yeah, Luke was one of my top choices. It was kind of between him and Yoda, so I definitely love that choice as well.
So what about you? E?
My fourth one. This might strike as a surprise to most people.
Hmm.
People might not even know him, even if you're a Marvel fan. Beta Ray Bill.
I know Beta Ray Bill. He's cool.
Interesting.
Yeah, he.
Hmm.
I don't know why. I just had this. He was a really awesome character. I've seen him sometimes in like little like comics, and I don't know why. Um, but when I was growing up, it was just a thing that kept popping back up, and it was
Hmm.
just I mean, he really struck as a cool character, and I remember him when I had like a piece of paper in my hand, and I was like probably 3 years old with like a freaking crayon and all that. I don't know why I would just start drawing him. I would usually throw it up after, I'm pretty sure, but yeah, he seemed like a cool character to me.
That's pretty cool. Maybe he influenced your passion for art.
Probably.
Yeah.
Who knows? Hopefully, we'll see him in the movies soon.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be awesome. So, what about you all?
So I'm gonna follow that up with another Marvel character. These next two picks for me are kind of safe, but it's just picks that I had to include. This is the first character that I ever read in a comic book, and he's pretty much the reason why I read comic books, and
Hmm.
that's going to be Marvel's Spider-Man.
Nice.
Okay. Um, and I guess the reason that I really gravitated towards Spider-Man as a kid was because he is a kid. And, the interesting thing is that with his character, he was probably the most relatable out of all the comic books that I've read because he was dealing with kids stuff, being a teenager in high school and
Hmm.
things of that nature. So it was very easy for me to look at him and say, you know what, I can envision myself, in Peter Parker's shoes. And then, with all the stories and his incredible collection of rogues characters, he probably has the best rogues gallery in all of comics except for maybe Batman.
Hmm.
But there was just so much to love about Spider-Man, and then he's integral to a lot of the Marvel universe. So he was just a character that I just fell in love with early on.
Nice, 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 nice. We're gonna get to our number threes now, and I have to open up a little space for one of you because one of you guys actually mentioned this a moment ago. Wolfie, my number three is Solid Snake. Actually,
Ooh,
I love Solid
nice.
Snake, dude. And I'll tell you why, and then actually I'll give you a little space to maybe explain a little bit more about why you love the character as well. Um, so Solid Snake for me, like in terms of telling a story in video games, um, that's a big reason. Like I have memories about like
Right.
loving the storyline from Metal Gear Solid, right? Yeah, you probably feel the same way.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. It's
Yep.
movies in video game format.
Yeah, that was the first time that like I think I was what did that come out in 97 or something like that, I think was Metal Gear Solid for
I don't even
PlayStation.
remember, to be
It
honest
was
with
a
you, but yeah.
while back, but I was a teenager. I was like 16 or 17 years old, and I remember that definitely, like you said, being the first time that I could think of like, wow, like this would make a really awesome movie because you play Super Mario Bros, you play other games like that, and like they made those into movies, and those are kind of jokes to most people, whether you enjoyed them or not. They were kind of seen as a joke in terms of like movie making. And like you said, Wolfie, like he's a guy that just he gets it done. Like no matter what the problem was that you threw at him in all of the games, he's gonna get that solved no matter what Metal Gears attack him, no matter what clones of his end up attacking him, no matter like whether it's ninjas or any type of challenge that you throw in front of Solid Snake, he was able to beat it. I always remember too, and this is a bit more of an interesting detail to me is that I always love, and to this day, sometimes I want to get kind of like a weird. motivation, like an inspirational motivation to like accomplish a mission. I know you talk about that a lot, Wolfie, in like the movies you watch and the music you listen to. The song at the end of Metal Gear Solid, of the very first one that plays, that kind of like really, it's like it's a woman singing in another language, and the song is called "The Best Is Yet to Come." Um, I always listen
Uh,
to that song over and over again. If you just
is
look it
that
up,
is that one?
if you don't
Wait, for
remember it.
which Metal Gear Solid is that? Is that from
The
three?
very that's the first one. That's
The very first one.
the theme at the end of the very first Metal Gear Solid to this day. And if
You
you
know,
can't
I gotta
remember it,
ask
look
you.
it up.
I gotta
Yes.
ask you, which is your favorite Metal Gear Solid?
I think it's still the first one for me. But like I have to say, I haven't played all the way through 4 or 5 yet. Three is awesome. Gameplay wise, it might be three. Because three had the most interesting gameplay with being in the jungle and all of that and having to
Yeah,
sustain yourself. But I think
yeah.
I kind of always color my decisions just like this one with a little bit of nostalgia. So for me, like that maybe puts one a little bit above three just for that reason.
For me, number three is definitely the best one. I thought that it
Hmm.
told because it's the essentially the origin of Metal Gear Solid. It's the story of Big Boss before anything. It's Big Boss.
Hmm.
It's the first introduction from chronologically of Ocelot and the whole nine. I thought that three played the best from a storyline perspective because it felt like a Bond movie, especially with
Yeah,
the female lead in the film was very much like a Bond girl, and then there was a song that I don't remember I thought that that's what you were talking about. There's a very Bond
I remember. I
song as the theme song for three. So I
remember what
love
you're
that.
talking
I don't
about.
want to take up too much time, on this, but for me, yeah, like, just to elaborate on Solid Snake. Solid Snake is just, like I said, I felt like he can easily be number one, on this list for me as well because he embodies just everything that's cool about a hero. Doesn't do it for any glory, doesn't do it for the paycheck, doesn't do it for the glory. He does it because it needs to get done.
Honor,
You
too,
know,
right? Honor, like
yeah,
a sense of
yeah.
honor.
From
That
an
was really cool.
espionage standpoint, he is basically like a samurai. And
Yeah,
that's what I really love about him. But more so than anything, I love the from a franchise perspective, I love the big boss legend, and that's what's awesome to me about it. So,
it
definitely
creates
finish four and definitely play five. Although five, I think, is the weakest from the story point perspective. But anyway,
yeah, I heard. I heard the
this
gameplay
is
is really good, and the
yeah,
only last thing that I will say, as a quick mention about Solid Snake is that I always loved how David Hayter characterized the character in the English
yes, yes,
translation. Who
yes,
also wrote X-Men and Spider-Man. He's a screenwriter too, if you guys know anything about him.
yeah.
He was a co-writer on those two films, but that also kind of like colors the mythology for me. But that's my top, or that's my number three. Excuse me, that's my number three character. So, Wolfie, what about you? What's your number three character?
So this is gonna be probably come a little bit unexpected for a lot of people, but my number three is Boba Fett.
Nice.
So the reason, obviously,
Really?
everybody,
Oh my God.
everybody
Number
here knows that I'm a
three.
big, yeah, number three. Everybody here knows that I'm a big Boba Fett fan. I think to me he's the best. He's the most. I want to say he's the most underrated Star Wars character because he wasn't given the uh the s- the story that he should have gotten, and the story that they were trying to tell before you know George Lucas decided that Star Wars wasn't for him anymore at some point and was like, you know
Mhm.
what, I'm just gonna end the movie here and kill him off however I kill him off. But clearly he couldn't kill him off because there has been legions of fans that have loved Boba Fett for who he is, and he's, to me, he's just this a very mysterious character. Clearly, people don't really know much about him still to this day, but Boba Fett's lore is just you know, it's just total badassery. The reason that we have the love for Mandalorians is because of how mysterious Boba Fett was. If we didn't have this character that's completely, um, shrouded in mystery with where did he get his armor, where did he get like his weapons, who the hell is this guy, then the Mandalorians as a story in general would never have been created. You know what I mean? Like, for whether you're a Boba Fett fan or not, whether you're, like, I know we have Death Watch fans over here, and we have Mandalorian fans. We would not have any of that if we didn't have the mystique and lore of Boba Fett. No matter, despite what you may think and feel of him. So, for me, that's the reason he's one of those, one of my on my top five. And like I said, the influences that I have from him is that you know that idea of uh being being efficient, right? Like what made him the best bounty hunter was that he was the most efficient, right? Like when it came to like all the bounty hunters like taking plan A and going like headstrong to try to take a bounty, he would figure out the easiest way, the safest way, the smartest way to catch a bounty and stuff. And that kind of, for me, Boba Fett embodied that play to win attitude, where like no, all bets are off, and there's no rule that he's not willing to break, and that's kind of how I see him, and you know how the reason he's on my top five. So
Hey Gabe.
Work
yeah,
smarter,
Hey
not
Gabe.
harder.
yeah,
Um, I thought this was a heroes list.
he's a hero. What are you talking about? He's not a
No, he's
villain.
not.
No,
I thought
no.
He's
this
a
was a
hero.
heroes list.
He's
So
a
my top
hero.
three is Darth Maul, and Darth Maul. Good night,
No,
everybody.
he's a hero. What? What? He's a bounty hunter. He has no specific allegiances.
He
Bounty
doesn't
hunters are
really
neutral.
do heroic stuff.
Yeah.
He does. He
He
has had
kills
heroic
people.
moments,
He kills people for a living. Anyway,
and he's still a hero.
So,
He's a hero. Let me ask you this: is the Mandalorian a hero?
I mean,
Yes or no?
he is an anti-hero,
All right then.
but not a
And
hero.
still a hero. Still a hero.
Not a
Anti-hero
hero.
and heroes are still heroes. Otherwise, they'd be called villains. All right. Don't give me that crap. Because without Boba Fett, we would not have his clone, the Mandalorian. Don't start this, okay? Don't start
yeah,
with
this is another conversation still. Many things need to be clarified, but we'll get to somebody else's
As
list
anyway.
before we get into that.
as the scribe and the scholar that is Jim Carrey says, "Alrighty then."
Mhm.
Alrighty then. Let's go. AJ, what about you? You're
Moving
number three.
right along.
All right. So, at number three, this is gonna sound a little similar, but this is my number three. My number three is Master Chief, and with
Nice.
him, I have
oh,
ascribed perseverance.
I'm glad you
Kind
got
of
some video
similar
game
to
characters.
some of the things we said around here. No matter what you put in front of that man, he will have gotten it done.
That's true.
This He's the definition of too stubborn to die.
Yeah.
In Halo 3, he jumps out of a spaceship with practically nothing.
With the bomb, right?
No, 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 not even
Oh,
that.
it's
Not
not
even
even
that.
that one?
No, that's in number 2.
Oh,
In
okay.
Halo 3, when the Prophet of Truth reaches Earth in the foreigner construct,
Mhm.
he jumps out of the ship with like nothing, just his armor and his shields, entering Earth's atmosphere, crash lands on the ground without anything but the armor and the shields, mind you,
Uh-huh.
and he has the nerve to get right back up.
Mhm.
damn.
The nerve of him.
Bro.
He's unkillable. He's very unkillable in a traditional sense of a video game character.
If
If
anything,
there,
to me, Master Chief is like the fusion of Solid Snake and Boba Fett.
I wouldn't say
You
Boba
know?
Fett.
Why not?
Yeah, yeah,
A
because
that's
ton of
he's too
weapons, a helmet. You don't see who he is? Come on. Are you
Bo-
kidding me?
Boba
Uh,
Fett is way too tasty.
Oh my God. This guy. This guy.
all right, but
Boba Fett
moving
is
on.
also unkillable. Like, oh my God. This guy. This guy. This guy. Oh my God. This guy.
AJ, AJ,
All right,
AJ.
but
Go
yeah,
ahead.
if there's anyone that you can actually perseverance, I find, is ranking higher than the past two I mentioned, even though they are equally important. I find that perseverance is important because in order for you to even apply any of these other attributes, you need to have perseverance to keep yourself going. You need to have that motivation to be a hero.
Hmm. And that's
And yeah,
big with Master Chief.
that's number three. Eli.
Okay. From here, my list started getting really iffy. So I'm just gonna go through this. My third is Rurouni Kenshin.
Nice.
I
Hmm.
mean, not a lot of people know who this is. At least I don't think so, right?
No, it's a
Okay.
pretty popular manga.
It is okay. Well, anyway, I went through like the mangas and well, the manga and the show, and he like Master Chief. He really has all of those character traits. There's just as you go along, he starts to because at first he seems a little bit immature, somewhat in the way he interacts with other characters, but as you go on, he seems like a kind, fun-loving, perceiving. There's just so many traits that I can use to describe him. Like
Hmm.
you, okay. Here's one example. When there's this kid who's part of a gang. He tries to rob Ruroni for his money to give back to the gang, or else he'll probably like die or something. Um, Roni gives him all of his money, and then he goes and kills the gang. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that might not sound like much, but like
I
he
don't
does
know.
it in
That sounds like much.
he does it in style. I remember I don't remember the specific I don't remember how the scene goes, but I remember at once he has a freaking dude and he's not even dead, but he's stuck to the ceiling because of his sword.
Hmm.
I don't even know how, but
Why don't you talk about one of the most interesting aspects of Rurouni Kenshin being his sword, right?
yeah, his sword.
His
I
sword
don't.
is so different because it's a reverse
Yeah, it's a
blade.
reverse blade.
Hmm.
So you can't really. It's hard to attack with that. I don't even think you can attack with that unless you're trained specifically for that sword.
Explain what a reverse blade is first.
A reverse blade is where like the usual cutting side is where you're using to cut, right? But the other side of the blade is
Dull.
dull. You can't cut with it. He uses the other side of the blade. So there's literally no possible way of cutting people with it except for he can do that.
He would have to flip the hilt so
Yeah.
that the curvature goes down instead of up.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
It's mad weird. This dude is mad weird, but like he can perceive through anything, especially with a freaking dull sword.
Hmm.
I mean, it's really you have to watch the show in order to understand me. I can't even do him justice. So I'm just gonna pass it on to Walt.
All right. So we're up to number three here on my list. And so anybody who knows me knows that I have two characters that I really, really love. One of them being Maul, which I did
Hmm.
not include in this list because I can admit that he's not a hero.
You're
Um,
damn right he's not.
but he's still badass beyond belief, you
But
know?
he's a bad guy.
Yeah. But and so this one here, I'm gonna kind of tread in Gabe's territory because he's usually a good guy, but he's been portrayed as being a bad guy also. And like I said, this is the second character that I'm just a super huge fan of, and that's the Incredible Hulk. Um,
Nice.
Nice.
and so
Nice.
he kind of blends in with my number four pick because the way I found out about the Hulk was through Spider-Man. And as a matter of fact, I have the comic book in front of me right now that
Yeah.
Hmm.
brought me to the Hulk, and that is the Amazing Spider-Man. I'm actually looking at the second part of it, but he was the first time I've ever seen the Hulk was in the Amazing Spider-Man issue 119. that was originally published way back in 1973. And in that set of issues, J. Jonah Jameson had tasked Peter Parker to go get pictures of the Hulk who was terrorizing Quebec at the time. And basically, the only way that Peter Parker could take these pictures was by suiting up as Spider Man and leaving the camera to just kind of self shoot by itself. This was one where the Hulk nearly killed Spider Man at the dam because he basically dropped the entire dam on top of him to the point where there was these boulders that Spider-Man just couldn't avoid, and it dragged him underneath, and he had a really tough time getting out. Hulk eventually decided to quit the battle because he was tired of trying to grab Spider-Man, who was jumping all over the place like a flea, and he just said, "You know what? Screw this. I'm leaving. I'm tired of trying to capture you." But that was the first time I ever saw Hulk, and I got really curious. So I started reading a lot of the stuff. And then 1977 came, and you had the Incredible Hulk TV show, which
Yeah.
was amazing for me as a 6 year old kid. I still remember the theme song to that show. And
Can you
it
sing
was
for us a little bit?
no, I'm not gonna do that to you guys. I'm not gonna do that to you guys. I have far much too
Dun,
much
dun,
respect,
dun,
and
dun,
I don't want to blow
dun,
your ears
dun,
out.
dun.
There you go. Jose's got it. And
No,
it
no,
was
no
just
offense to the Incredible Hulk show, but I always loved the reference in Family Guy. There was an end of a Family Guy episode where Stewie was doing the same walk away with the hobo pack, trying to hitchhike
mhm.
with the Incredible Hulk ending theme playing. Anyway, I always remember that because it's hilarious. Continue, please.
Yeah. No, but like I said, that was a show that it was a huge part of my childhood, and
Hmm.
every time it was on I made sure that I was in front of the TV watching it because it was basically him going from town to town and helping out people and stuff like that. And there was so many psychological themes because him, he's literally the lonely man. He can never be in one place for too long because he's always being hunted and stuff like that. So that was just one of my if there's one show that I will stop to watch every single time, it's going to be that one. And so like I said, it's gone on in the comic books. Unfortunately, we haven't had really good Hulk movies yet. We've had appearances of him. um
I beg to differ personally, but
no, that's fine. Like I said, the one that was done with Eric Bana was an interesting take of the Hulk. I just didn't like some of the characters in that movie.
Hmm.
The best one that we've seen is the one that had Edward Norton.
right, exactly.
And
That's why I kind of disagree because of that one. Because I thought that was a really good. I thought that was a really good start to a Hulk franchise.
yeah, and I guess maybe that's the reason why I'm disappointed in that because we never saw the continuation of it. We kind of saw it within the Marvel movies, but I'm ultra disappointed that we Planet Hulk was given such a short shrift by having them throwing it into Ragnarok and not giving it
Yeah,
due that story really should have.
yeah.
Could
Um,
retell it. Well, no, they can't retell it because it doesn't
they
end
can't really
anywhere
because they've
near
already done. Yeah,
the way that
exactly.
it's supposed to. Yeah.
I just hope at one point they do World War Hulk, and I hope they do it right. At least that's one of my you know wishes. But that's my number three.
They could find a way to put that in, I think. They could always have him turn again and turn into the Savage Hulk. And that would be interesting, I think, because World War Hulk is a good storyline. All right. So, like, my number two, I'm not going to talk about it too much because it's actually one of your picks, Walt, and it relates to your previous pick. My number two is Spider Man. Um, and I mean, what else is there to be said about Spider Man? I've said so much about him. You said so much about him. He's so much more relatable than most other heroes. When you're growing up and you see Superman, who's a space alien, you see Batman, who's a weird billionaire. Um, And then you see, you see Wolverine, who's a savage, short Canadian dude, who says "bub" all the time and smokes cigars. You can't really relate to that when you're a kid. And then you look at Spider Man, and you look at this guy. He's a teenager. He's going through a lot of the same problems that you might have been going through when you started reading comic books as a kid, or at least you'll be going through those problems shortly, I guess, in most cases.
Yep.
And Stanley really created him with that in mind, and that's why he stays so relatable to this day. Why we've had so many movies, we've had so many different iterations of him, so many comics, a reboot, a new Spider-Man and Miles Morales, other Spider-Men, as evidenced in the comics, and of course the ones that we saw into the Enter the Spider-Verse film. But he's one of the most iconic comic book characters and superheroes of all time. And as Walt said, again, a great mention to the fact that he is the superhero with one of the best rogues galleries, probably outside of Batman. And I think that's in part also because of the way that those were written. It's so relatable because they were mentors of his, they were friends of his. That's another thing that made those characters and Spider-Man that much more interesting and that much more robust as a character for me growing up, and why he was such a huge hero of mine. I remember seeing the Tobey Maguire movie, the first one coming out, and the second one, not so much the third one. I remember there being total nerd tears in my eyes at how, to me at the time, how perfectly it was done, for Spider-Man fans, even though, Tobey Maguire probably looked a little bit older than Spider-Man should have. That notwithstanding, he played the role really well of both Peter Parker and of Spider-Man. And I mean, there's, like I said, there's not much more to be said about it. It's Spider-Man, whatever. It's cliche. He's my second favorite superhero of all time. I love Peter Parker. I love Spider-Man. And I will pass it off to you, Wolfie. Let us know who your number two favorite hero is. I
Did we lose
Hello.
Wolfie?
think we lost Wolfie.
Oh no.
Oh
No, I'm
no.
back. I'm back. I'm back. I'm sorry. I'm back. I apologize. I realized my mic wasn't plugged in. I guess I moved and it wasn't all the way plugged into my laptop. I apologize about that.
All right,
Yes.
we didn't lose you for too long.
It
Wolfie,
was a
let us
Boba
know.
Fett issue.
Number two.
Oh.
All right. Leave it
It's
alone.
all
Leave it
good
alone.
because I'm gonna go all the way with this, not halfway. All right. So,
I'm sorry. Couldn't resist.
All
uh,
right.
so anyway, what I was saying when I didn't realize that my mic was plugged in, is that
Uh-huh.
I really went back and forth between the number one and number two because you know I almost really want to make this next hero my number one because he's influenced me in pretty much every area of my personality and and not just in my personality but also in from my martial arts perspective, how competitive I am, how I teach, how I train certain people, and that's Vegeta.
Oh,
So I absolutely love the idea of who Vegeta is, the turnaround that he's made from early villain to heartwarming father and family man, and where originally he's an anti-hero, and there's kind of like a little bit of a trend here. I'm sure that you can see he's a little bit of an anti-hero where he doesn't want to be the hero, but he's forced to be the hero because of the things that he believes in, which are you know the protection and safety of his wife and kid, Bulma and Trunks and his whole family and whatnot. And he does it not just for them, but also for his own personal pride. And pride is something that I struggle with. I have a lot of pride, and sometimes I'm too prideful in the stuff that I do. And
mhm,
even when I teach, when I train, when I compete in jujitsu, I'm a bit prideful sometimes. And it could be a
mhm,
negative trait. I can definitely see how it's not the best thing for me, but at the same time, it's just who I am and my personality, and the same way that's who Vegeta is. It's what makes him who he is. You know, his pride in being a Saiyan, his pride in trying to be the best fighter in the world. Even though many a times he's found lacking and is shortly falling behind Goku, you know, it's his pride that keeps driving him to be better. Um, but you know, when it comes to like being a teacher, you know, it's funny, you know, when it came to Vegeta training Trunks and stuff like that, we see the like, you know, him like kind of beating the crap out of Trunks and like not giving him even the light of day and just being like, you know, you're a weakling if you can't do this and that the other. But he only does that to try to strengthen Trunks, where in his own mind and heart, he doesn't want to hurt him, even though he doesn't voice that. And again, he doesn't voice it because he doesn't want to show weakness as a father, which is, again, that's his pride. And I think I see that in myself a lot when I teach and coach, where sometimes I might go a little rough. You know, I can picture, you know, training Eli sometimes back in the day. Sometimes I would go a little extra hard and rough on him, you know, just to kind of get it out of him. And as much as I don't want to like be too to apply too much pressure or like, you know, too much, I do it because it's what's best for him as I'm trying to level him up in jujitsu and martial arts in general. Like in my heart it hurts, but I don't show that, you know. And the same thing goes with a lot of my students. But yeah, I love how competitive he is, how prideful he is about how competitive he is, and that's how I am. You know, I'm super competitive. I'm really prideful about how competitive I am, even if
Mhm.
sometimes I don't come out on top. I am always going to believe that I'm going to be on top. So, and that's just one of the reasons I love Vegeta as a character. I think that he also represents a flawed character that's trying to do better, as opposed to the perfect character. Like it's the comparison between Batman and Superman, in my opinion, where you rarely ever see flaws in Superman. He's the perfect pretty boy, and then you have
Mhm.
Batman, who's like a flawed human. And I think that's why there's people that have more love for Batman, because they can relate to that. You know, same thing Vegeta and Goku. Goku is seems to always do the right thing and can't do a single bad or evil or mistake really decision and stuff like that. And that's great. And he's always overpowered. He's always the one that has like the most power, no matter what. And he represents that. But I think that there's more people that love Vegeta because he's a flawed being that is trying to do better. So, yeah, that's my number two. AJ?
Before
Oh,
before I get into mine, um, I just want to contend: is that really true of late about Goku? I don't know.
about what?
He's being the perfect hero. I mean,
He kind of
Uh,
is. I mean, look, like if the only things that are negative traits about him is he's not necessarily the best dad, so to speak. From when you see it from certain perspectives, he's definitely not a great husband, but he absolutely loves Chi Chi. Will never like step out on her, and he's always gonna protect her. Everything that he does is for the betterment of not just mankind and Earth, but for the whole universe. Everything that he does, he seems to be the champion of the universe, and not just one universe, but for all universes. You know,
He's
he's
only
like the savior. So
only because only because he put all those universes in danger first.
yes, but see, here's the thing. He did it
great.
innocently. That's the difference. He has never done anything maliciously. When it happens because of an innocence happenstance. You know, he was doing something innocently, and it happened to be that, like, oh, well, this means that the universe is in peril. It was like, oh, my bad. I didn't mean to, you know, versus someone like Vegeta that was literally flying around and blowing up planets.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I don't wholeheartedly agree with that, but we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah,
all right.
that's a podcast for another day.
Oh, we'll
Ooh.
get to
All right. So at number two, I think is going to be a little bit unconventional because this guy, he at first started out as being really, really bad. Like, I'm going to go to a city and wreck it bad. Then he'd be good for a little bit. Then he'd be kind of, I guess, hangry. sometimes, depending on if the villain was a big enough threat for the Earth.
Oh,
And then once you get to a certain point, he becomes bad again. But this recent run of movies actually makes him pretty good again.
let me guess.
Okay.
Let me guess.
Hmm.
Let me guess.
No,
You're wrong.
I'll
I
be
think I know who
fine.
it is, and you're wrong.
Yes, there we
Yo.
go.
Gojira.
Oh,
And
I
for
was wrong.
Godzilla, I think he best embodies strength. Now, it's important to have perseverance. It's important to have hope. It's important to have compassion, but you also have to have the strength to make those kinds of differences when you need to. And for me, Godzilla best embodies that because no matter what monster he's come up against, well, with the exception of maybe one or two, he just always beats him. He's always the superior fighter, always the superior, you know, I'm gonna, I'm not gonna let you get away with this. And in the Showa era, he really was practically a goody two shoes. Like he would actively help, well, maybe not the most actively help people, but he would save the earth when and if it called for it. And especially in this, the recent movies too. Thank God for King of the Monsters too. Like that scene when he was actively working alongside the humans to defeat that three-headed golden devil. Man, it was such a cool thing to see. And so for me, that's why Godzilla rests on number 2 and why I think he best embodies strength. What about you, Eli? Who embodies strength? Or maybe you're following a different path. I don't know. You tell us.
Um. Yo. This character I've been trying to avoid for a very long time, considering I'm a Dragon Ball fan. Um. I don't know. Something just told me like go back to Dragon Ball GT. I
Hmm.
honestly don't understand why I disliked it so much. Something about it just kind of put me off. And going back at it when I watched the Shadow Dragon saga, um Goku is definitely one of my favorite heroes. I don't know why. I was expecting it to be Gohan. Um but SSJ for Goku is definitely one of the best heroes. He in especially in GT, he really puts out those character traits for everybody to see. Um, and each time I think of GT, the music that melancholy music at the very end, and SSJ for Goku standing on that rock with the earth in the background, it just pops into my brain and it's so nostalgic. Like he is such a good hero. When I say that, he's been turning into a villain over the years. I think we all know that. But
A villain? What?
yes, yes. I put it on the WhatsApp. Okay, but you'll see why. But anyway,
Huh.
GT Dragon Ball GT would have been a great end, and I don't know why. Just because of that last. Okay, I'm getting a little bit off topic here, but Goku, he has the perseverance. His arrogance starts off in the beginning of the show, but then as it goes towards the end, you can definitely see him start to change. It's like from the immature person that he was before.
Hmm.
Just to me, from the
Okay.
immature person that he was before, at the end you could just see like that he was a little bit more matured, considering that he's technically a kid, but technically an adult. So it's he's one of my favorite heroes. I'm just gonna end it there.
All right.
I mean,
Pretty
I think GT is amazing, and I personally, I guess I'm in the minority, but I'm in the minority,
You're
but
not in the
I actually
minority. You're not.
Well, I mean, the only thing that I really disliked about GT,
Don't you dare.
I think we all
Don't
know
you
it.
dare.
That
I
that
will cut you.
that high pitched cackle,
Oh my god.
that freaking the arrogance that makes him sound like a baby. Like I would be surprised if he didn't have a diaper. I'm not even gonna lie.
Stop. You're treading dangerous territory.
I mean,
All
like,
right.
all right.
All right. We'll get some more Dragon Ball, I promise.
I think we're
We
gonna
will.
have a Dragon Ball episode.
We're gonna have to have a lot
yeah,
of like episodes to settle some scores here.
yeah, yeah. Because I
Well,
just
what
want to
about?
prove that baby sucks.
Well,
Here we
Well,
go. Here we
All right, all right,
go.
all right,
all
all right.
right, guys. Let's
Fight's
Wall.
keep
about
this
to
civil.
start. All right, I'm gonna
So,
get
well,
into. I'm gonna get into my second, my top, my top two, my number two, whatever you want to call it, and my top two. They follow similar themes. These are characters that deal with courage in the face of certain death, and above all, honor and their ideals is the most important thing for them. And so there's only one way I can say my number two, and it's this. My name is General Maximus Decimus Meridius, father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my revenge in this life or the next. Gladiator is the first DVD that I ever bought. It
Mm-hmm.
holds a special place in my collection, and my collection is probably about 700 strong, not including the digital movies that I've kind of transitioned into. But that's a DVD and a movie that, again, much like Spider-Man and the Hulk, I if it's on or if there's something about it, I'm stopping everything and I'm watching it. His story is just fascinating. I mean, here you have a guy who is a soldier of Rome, and he literally is told by the emperor in his dying breath that he wants him to succeed him to make sure that the Senate takes over for the people. And he does not want his son to rule because he realizes that his son is cruel and you know unemotional and detached away from the needs of Rome and stuff. And then, he has this trial and this road that he has to take.
Mm-hmm.
And with his last breath, he defeats Commodus. And again, it's all selfless on his part because his thing is all about citizenship and his thing is all about, what? I have to do the right thing for the people of Rome. And if it costs me my life, whatever, yeah, there's a little bit of revenge involved in there and stuff like that. But you know what? At the end of the day, he's a very selfless character, and he wears his honor on his sleeve, and he's just a fascinating character for me.
He is a great character. I mean, he's really good too because you're right. Even though it's a revenge tale, he wants to get revenge in this film not only for his family but also for Rome because of what Commodus does. Because he knows that Commodus was the one who killed his own father and a father to Maximus,
Mm-hmm.
the previous emperor. So he's a great character, and I always remember that how much you loved Maximus from the Gladiator movies for a very very long time. So I'm not surprised to see him come in at your number two. All right. So my number one is probably going to come as no surprise to anyone, and I will say this as a preface. I approached it a little differently from some of you guys, honestly. I wasn't including anti-heroes in this list. Otherwise, I would have definitely chosen another character from this series who is my favorite character in the series. I actually tend to be more of an anti hero guy or villain guy when it comes to the characters that I enjoy the most. Um, but again, this is no surprise, and I'll just get to it. My number one character is actually Goku from Dragon Ball. Okay. And it probably would have been Vegeta. Okay. Because much like Wolfie said, Vegeta actually ends up being the more interesting character for the most
Yeah.
part because of his redemption and because of all of that. to me, I mean, he's just the cooler, more badass character. And again, I always love a good anti-hero. And Vegeta starting off as a flat out villain and becoming a hero by the end of the series. Um, Super notwithstanding, kind of flipping his character back around and back around again. Super notwithstanding was a little rough for Vegeta, even though he had his moments. But Goku, I mean, I look at it this way. As I said um, prior to this, it's a lot of it has to do with a little bit of nostalgia on my part, characters that kind of affected me. And there's really no other character. If you guys look at my bios and you look at what I talk about, you look at even my profile photo on the Captivate website. It's Dragon Ball characters because there's no other character I can think of that gives me more memories than Goku and his entire universe. I remember coming home to watch Adult Swim, to recording it after high school, and I remember connecting with my friends regarding Dragon Ball. My friends were all also Vegeta fans like I was, but like this mythology wouldn't exist if it weren't for the original Dragon Ball. We're not talking about Dragon Ball Z or Super or GT here. If it weren't for Goku existing as a character, then not only would most of the other Dragon Ball properties not exist, a lot of anime in general wouldn't exist if it weren't for the influence of Goku. I guess you could say that the bigger hero in a way is Toriyama, the way that I'm putting it, but as was mentioned before, when you were talking about Vegeta Wolfie, Goku in a way is kind of the perfect hero, even though in Super he has gotten a little bit stupider and his motivations are a little bit more muddled. He saved the universe, he saved the multiverse, he saved Earth, he saved all his friends. Like what hasn't he saved at this point? And it's out of his innate goodness as a character. It's kind of like a Superman story too, because we all know that he was influenced to a certain extent by Superman. He's like the Boy Scout, just like a Superman. But if you ask me, and this will get the fandom divided because it always does, in most canon, he's more powerful than Superman. He could probably beat Superman in most canon, and not all canon. And again, he's saved the multiverse, and he's even more pure and even more of a Boy Scout in a way than Superman is because of his inherent naivety, which is part of what makes him such a great character. And I'll say this, like the thing that is always mentioned in the show, and the thing that drives the show, and the thing that makes him probably the thing that's most important, I think, to making Goku a great character is not that he's powerful. Um, it's that even his enemies eventually see respect. They end up respecting him. You have that happen with every single character almost every character that's in Dragon Ball was originally one of Goku's enemies. So you look at that, and you're talking about Yamcha and Krillin and Frieza, who ends up kind of being a friend of his in the Tournament of Power. Vegeta,
Broly.
Broly, everyone is somebody who challenges him, and he changes them through the fight. So that's also what makes Dragon Ball so interesting. There's a narrative that comes out in the fight, and
You can't
so
help but like him.
yeah, you can't help but like him. You know what I mean? Even though again he's a Boy Scout and he's kind of dumb and super, which causes his own problems. And the stupid Super Goku, as they call him. Um, Regardless, he's still probably one of the greatest heroes, at least in modern fiction, in terms of what he accomplishes, what he embodies, and what he's inspired in terms of other heroes. So, yeah, for me, that's my number one. My number one is Goku from the Dragon Ball franchise. So let's continue the hype. Wolfie, what's your number one?
So my number one, it's funny because my number one has kind of not been in media for a long time until just recently, and he's been my number one for a really long time, and this is why I kind of struggled with it because, again, he hasn't really been there. There isn't a lot of media out there for this character. Meanwhile, Dragon Ball Z has taken a big, or Dragon Ball in general has taken a big chunk of my interest over the years and stuff like that, and especially Vegeta story, which is again why I struggled in choosing this. But the way that I went about in choosing this character to be the number one is purely on the fact that he was my very first favorite character of anything. Of course, I had favorite TV shows and things like that, but this is the first character that I really kind of fell in love with, and it's also the first character in the genre for which my list is a part of. And if you guys notice, every single one of my the characters in my list, they're all anti-heroes. They're all people that didn't want to do the job that needed to be done, but they were the only ones that could do the job and ended up doing the job, for whatever, moral driver they had. And the reason that I really like anti-heroes, and I'm going on a tangent before I name my number one, but the reason I really like anti-heroes is because anti-heroes really do kind of represent humanity. It's They start off with this one personality and this one archetype, and then they evolve into a different person. They eventually become the hero. Anti-heroes are people that aren't inherently heroic and become heroes. And so this is why I really really like the genre and the archetype rather. And the reason for me, Cloud Strife is my number one, is because he's the very first anti-hero that I fell in love with. So from the Final Fantasy VII series, Cloud Strife is my number one because from him I fell in love with the anti-hero archetype through him, and through that is where I then fell in love with Wolverine, who didn't make the list, but he's definitely, like, again, it's a really hard list, but
Yeah.
Wolverine, Daredevil, Vegeta, Boba Fett. These guys are people that started off maybe as villains, or people that were just that don't want to be the hero that end up having to be the hero and stuff. People that end up kind of like turning a leaf. And Cloud is that first one for me. He went. For those of you guys that don't know the story, he's an ex-soldier that becomes a mercenary. He doesn't care about anyone. All he cares about is making money. Even his own past friends, he really does could care less about like helping them out. He just wants to, live his life, make money, be mysterious. Doesn't want to talk about his past. Doesn't want to talk about anything, and could care less about people's, stories and stuff. Doesn't want to hear it. But through the actions and the story that was told in Final Fantasy VII, he then becomes the man that has love for all the people around him. And his own heart gets changed by the interaction that he had with Aerith in the game, and he goes from being this very cold-hearted person to the guy that has to save everyone, you know and not just everyone, but has to save the world. And so, and all doing that with like the most badass sword I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
um and yeah, that's why he's my number one.
Oh man, I cannot wait, man. My copy of Final Fantasy VII Remake is coming on Monday.
Dude.
I'm gonna have so
And then
much to geek out about in
you know
that and other regards.
and then that's the thing too, that like, as much as I've always loved like Cloud, like when the game first came out, I bought the collector's edition, if there was such a thing. I remember going to EB Games at that time. I bought Final Fantasy VII, a package that they had together, which was a white T-shirt, a baseball cap, a bunch of stickers, a lanyard, and it was like that was like the original collector's edition video game. And I got all of it. I got like all the Game Informer magazines. If it had Final Fantasy on it, I wanted it, because there really isn't anything, right? With comic books, we have comic book stories, right? When it comes to Daredevil, I can read Daredevil for the rest of my life because there's always new stories. There's movies, there's TV shows about a lot of these other characters. With Final Fantasy and with Cloud specifically, there really is only the one game. And then the couple of times that he's like shown up in like Kingdom Hearts and some other kind of side story games, they really only used him as a playable character in the game, but not anything that fleshes out the story. So I've
True.
been waiting since then for, like, more expansion on Cloud Strife's, story, and we finally get the remake. So this is why, like, maybe it's a little fresh for me, but this is why I love the remake and Final Fantasy in general so much, because I finally get more Cloud Strife.
Oh man, like I said, I can't wait. we're gonna be geeking out about that
Oh,
together
dude,
in a few days, man. I can't wait.
cannot wait, man. Hell yeah.
Ah,
AJ, what about you? You're number one.
yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna preface a few things.
Okay.
I am by no means a fan of heroes. I am the guy that likes my villains.
Hmm.
Anti-heroes are cool, but you know,
We kind of all do.
they're not
We're all,
villains. So
we're,
no. And making this list was really difficult. I had to put a lot of thought into this list, and especially organizing it the way I did. Now, to some of you, this one my number one might seem super obvious, but I'm going to tell you guys beforehand, I did
mhm.
not even think of including this character from this universe on
Interesting.
this list because
Okay.
if you look at their track record, they are probably the suckiest heroes on earth.
Okay.
They get the job done, but there are just so many consequences. And then those
Mhm.
consequences turn into problems, and then those problems lead into bigger problems, and then those explode and it turn into an apocalypse.
Yeah. Try letting.
Interesting.
I'm not even gonna.
I think we know where he's going with this.
Yeah.
And despite all these problems that they have with the way they do things, what it really comes down to, I actually end up respecting them more than I ever thought I really would.
Mhm.
Because, like, no matter what situation they're in, they're not always making sometimes they make the hard choice, but what they often do is they make the hard choice. And so this character embodies sacrifice at the
Mhm.
very, very top of the list.
Okay.
Because in
Okay.
order to be an effective hero, the penultimate thing, in my opinion, is you occasionally, or most often, depending on the situation, you need to be able to do the hard thing, even if
Okay.
no one else wants to do it. And especially if you're the only one who literally can do it. And so, my number one, predictable as it may be, even though it's
Interesting.
not, is Sam
Sam
Winchester
Winchester.
of season 5.
There you go.
I saw that coming, bro.
Ah.
So the
Uh-huh.
reason why I respect this guy so much is because let me give you a rundown of season 5. Season 5 was the age of trial and error.
Supernatural.
Mhm.
Supernatural. This is
Supernatural.
the Supernatural TV series. Season 4 ending with Sam accidentally freeing the devil from his cage in hell.
Oops.
And that was because in the season before, this demon that they were hunting, Lilith, killed his brother. But even though they ended up catching on too late and Dean goes to try and stop him, it's still too late. So the rest of season 5 is contending with the devil himself. They find the gun that kills anything. That doesn't
Oh,
work.
Colt.
The quote.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
They eventually team up with this other being, the trickster. And what they end up doing is they get a round table of gods and they're able to get them on their side to try and take Lucifer down. Doesn't work. So the only option they have left is to let Lucifer possess Sam, but Sam has to be the one to jump right back into hell. And just still like this is the penultimate, like, if you had to put owning up to your mistakes on a plaque, this guy's face is going to be on it as he jumps down that hole.
Yo.
Because this is a character that has been impossible to deal with the whole season. And to be fair, this was actually supposed to be the end of the show. The way that they ended up dealing with this was just so like Their whole thing is we're not doing it unless we stay together. Season 5 was the one time they broke that promise. And that made it all the more impactful as a
Mhm.
season ending. And just, God, when, because they end up going to, see, the whole premise of Lucifer Rising was that the angels basically orchestrated it so that they can just get the apocalypse done with. They wanted it to happen. So their leader, Michael, was going to go and fight Lucifer at the chosen battlefield to start Armageddon and basically tear apart the entire earth.
Mhm.
Dean goes to stop them. Well, they don't fight, but Lucifer's obviously angry that he's interrupting. Sam, while beating his own brother, well, he's not doing it himself, Lucifer is. He's able to muster the strength to actually hold what was the strongest being in creation at that time. Hold him for a good 5 minutes and was able to jump into a hole that, mind you, is the worst place you ever want to find yourself. Like before in season 3, Dean had gone to hell, but Lucifer's part of hell? Like, that's not going to be, that is like the absolute, uh, you need to have a certain kind of willpower to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And because of that, I respect this iteration of the character a whole lot.
Totally agree. I thought you were more of a
Yeah.
Dean character.
I was surprised too.
I mean, Dean person.
But if you actually look at both of their deeds, Sam is actually proven the stronger of the two brothers. No,
You know what?
it is.
You know what? Now that I'm looking back on it,
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That's why I nominated Sacrifice as number 1, and thus Sam Winchester.
Damn. Okay.
Oh,
You know what? Yeah. Okay. Okay.
all right, all right, all right.
Okay. So I'm guessing it's me. Hmm.
Who's your
It is
number
you, sir.
1?
I was way too iffy on this one. Way too. Too much to be. I think this just. You know what? No. Naruto. It's a little.
Interesting.
It's very cliche. It's very
I
kid
mean,
like.
Goku's kind of cliche,
I
so
know, but
that's
like
okay.
this is cliche. I'm talking like
Uh-huh.
cliche. But
Okay.
like
Well, tell us why, because I'm curious. Why Naruto?
okay. One of my problems is I received a lot of hate comments with my art and um
It's just haters, man.
yeah.
Haters with no talent.
Screw the haters.
Yeah, man. Exactly. Forget that. So go ahead, Eli.
Okay,
Tell us.
go.
Tell us some more.
Bring it home with Naruto. Okay.
Yeah.
So Naruto's a character that he's loved for a long time.
Is he getting
He's
emotional over there?
yeah, a little bit.
It's
You know.
okay. It's okay. Artists,
Okay.
like artists, we're all artists are have a passion, and when you're passionate about something, emotion's important. Emotion is a part of that artistic passion. So I feel
Absolutely.
it. I understand it.
To do art, you have to bleed the emotion into the art. Otherwise, it's not art. It's just a
Yeah,
drawing.
exactly,
You know.
exactly.
And
That's
so
what's
you
a
know
part
what?
of it. That's the best part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it, Eli, because good art is usually something that a lot of people dislike because it makes people passionate.
Mm-hmm.
So you should not feel bad about what haters say about your art. You should tell us about why you think Naruto is awesome.
I mean, I've
And
been dying to finish Naruto just so I can get to Boruto, just because he really is kind of like a total bad A double crooked. No, wait, what is it? Is
Double
double
dollar sign.
Double
double
dollar sign.
dollar sign? Yeah, double
Yep.
dollar. What's the other one like? Crooked hockey sticks?
Crooked
Yeah,
hockey.
double.
I
Yeah,
think that's
double
I think
crooked.
that's L.
Yeah.
Remember, it's HE double crooked hockey stick or something like that.
No, because
But
then
yeah,
that would be a proper hockey stick.
I,
Anyway,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter.
All right. This is
So go
another
ahead.
fet.
You
Oh,
want to tell us, Eli?
So anyway, Naruto is a thing that I've been wanting to get into, but there's so many
it's a
episodes.
lot,
You know,
man. It's a
it's
lot.
it's a
Hmm.
daunting task, and I've seen an episode here and there. I think we started Naruto at one point, but it was just, what is that, like over 500 episodes altogether or something like that?
It's way more than that. It's something like, isn't it
Naruto's
like
more than
over
that.
700?
Oh my god. I don't think I
If
don't
you
have
do if
time
you do
for
Naruto
regular.
and then Shippuden, I think it's like 790 or something like that.
Yeah, that's
It's a
something that
huge amount.
I don't think I'll ever do in my lifetime. You know,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
Oh,
it's
Yeah,
super
um,
crazy.
there's like 500 episodes of Naruto Shippuden and 220 of the original anime apparently.
Yeah,
yep.
So
so
you
it's like
could go on forever.
it's crazy.
um,
Go ahead.
I don't know why, but he really kind of, how do you,
What are you trying to say? Like, is he's one of these guys that just doesn't care, or is he selfless? What's
He
the
kind
quality, the character trait that you really like about Naruto?
he's kind of like a Goku character, isn't he? Kind of.
Determination.
yeah, um,
Hmm.
yeah, because he struggles. He's he's received a lot of like hate because based off of
Right.
like the fact
The
that
He's
he's
the five tailed, right? Is that what it
Nine
is?
tail, nine tail.
Nine tail,
That's
nine tail.
true. Yeah, he was
Hmm.
always seemed like an outcast, right, Eli?
Mhm.
He always seemed like an outcast, like just like not like a full ninja. He was never like you know like just like everyone else. So everybody kind of like just made him out to be this lesser than everyone else kind of character, right?
And the great thing is that, spoiler alert, he does jump up to that higher plane, right? What is the title that he achieves?
Hokage, yeah, he becomes Hokage.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Yeah,
so I can see why Eli really likes him.
yeah,
I think it's a character that he likes, the determination that he has, and it's the no quit attitude, especially in the face of you know like he said, all the haters and all the
yeah,
negative comics and stuff. It doesn't phase him, and he just continues to do what he has to do to get to where he needs to be.
yeah.
Yep.
And he achieves it, which is the most
It,
important lesson.
Yep.
it reminds me of why I love Spider-Man, and Eli, I understand it's tough sometimes. Maybe you relate to him in kind of in the way that me and Walt related to Spider-Man, and like what it's like to grow up in certain ways, and that's
You know,
okay. That's what makes great heroes in fiction. Also,
yeah,
relatability.
before we get to like vaults, I mean that's kind of like I think that's why we're doing this list and why I think it is important to remember who the heroes are in our lives, because these heroes are important beacons of of ideals that make us better people. They're good guiding points. Some of these heroes for me, like I said, they provide certain guidance that maybe otherwise you don't find in your actual life and stuff. So
Exactly.
it's really important. Yeah,
Fictional heroes are not. They were written by real people who have
yeah,
real emotions and real motivations and real
right,
morals, and that's what makes them so
exactly. Yeah,
fantastic. Hmm.
right.
Walt, do you want to, or Eli? Is there anything else you want to say? If not, I'll let you take it easy over there, and we'll jump into
No,
Walt's number one. What do
no,
you
I
what
think
do you, what do you think?
All right, so
Go ahead,
we're
man.
good. I think we're
Hmm.
good.
Thank you, Eli.
Um, so my number one, again, plays to the theme of my top two picks, and it's a character in one of my favorite movies of all time.
Hmm.
That movie being The Last Samurai.
Mm,
Okay.
Oh, how did I not see that coming?
Yeah.
that's
So
a good one. You know, it's funny. We spoke about like a lot of the stuff on your list, Walt. Me and you spoke about pretty recently.
yeah,
It's really
exactly.
interesting.
I
Yeah.
think part of that kind of just,
Tom Cruise's
it
character
came out in me
falling
again. You know what I'm
fast.
saying? Because just talking about all that stuff, it kind of
Tom
reminded me
Cruise,
of the
man,
characters that I love as a person.
dude's iconic.
So yeah, so the movie itself is about Tom Cruise plays a character. He's a former U.S. Army captain who's really not the best version of himself when you first see him, and he's asked to train the Imperial Japanese Army, and this happens at a time when Japan is kind of like in flux. It's fighting with its traditional values against modernization of the Western civilization, and the struggle of where Japan is going to lie. And he realizes, as soon as he gets there, that these guys are just peasants and they don't know how to defend themselves, and he sees, he's got his work cut out for him. But during one of the battles, um he gets taken hostage, I guess, if you want to say. He's a prisoner of war, so to speak, by Ken Watanabe's character. And that character is named Katsumoto. And he has to live with them because the winter in Japan is rough, and he gets taken at a time where the passages to get back to civilization is not easy to get to. And so spending his time there with the quote unquote enemy, he lets go of he's treated badly at the beginning because he is the enemy in their eyes, but not in Katsumoto's eyes. In
Mhm.
Katsumoto's eyes, he's just another warrior from the opposite side, but he holds no ill will to him. And so throughout his stay there, he lets go of his vices. He stops the drinking. He stops, and he starts to embrace the Japanese culture, which is something that I find interesting in my life. I'm fascinated by Japanese culture, the Bushido, the samurais, and things of that nature. And so eventually he learns to, you know he sides with them and he sees what they're going through. So my favorite character, however, is not Tom Cruise's character.
Oh,
Mhm.
It's Ken Watanabe's character, because
oh,
I find him to be so regal and so honorable in the way that he presents himself, the way that he treats others. He, his will and his sense of purpose and tradition is strong enough that he's willing to do whatever it takes, again, to make sure that he does what he believes is right for Japan. And he embraces Tom Cruise's character, and he doesn't
Mhm.
treat him like a normal, bad guy would treat somebody that he captured. He treats him with respect. He brings him into his family. You know, and one of the things that I found fascinating is that the wife, there's a moment where while he's being captured, he actually kills one of the samurais. And Katsumoto actually tells him that he has to live with the wife of the soul of the samurai that he killed and slain. And to see that relationship evolve, there's so many beautiful things about this movie. And at the very end, there's that big battle, and Watanabe's character sacrifices himself, as do all the samurais that are leading this rebellion. That to me is one of the strongest scenes in my memory, of sacrifice, and just the sheer will of him saying, you know what, I know I'm going to die here, but I'm going to die as honorably as I can. So that to me, speaks volumes of the character. And that's why, for me, Ken Watanabe's character in The Last Samurai is my favorite hero of all time.
I like that
You know,
choice.
I have to, I want to add to that. See, the thing, and it's funny because The Last Samurai is one of my favorite movies for the same reason, you know, for Ken Watanabe's character, because he exemplifies through his actions and his beliefs that he's not only a great teacher, because that's really what he is. And that scene where he
Mm-hmm.
has to, he teaches Tom Cruise's character about, you know, their culture and what it is to be a great warrior and the respect that he has for warriors. He teaches his essentially his sister or sister-in-law. It was sister. He teaches his sister, who was the wife of the samurai that Tom Cruise killed. He's teaching her that to live with the supposed enemy. He's teaching his own soldiers through his actions how to treat him and how to have a certain outlook. He's also considered the emperor's one of the emperor's greatest teachers, right? But
Yeah,
not only
yeah.
that, he is also simultaneously the consummate student. The reason he has Tom Cruise is because Tom Cruise's character is because he wants to learn about his enemy. He wants to learn about their culture, and he wants to learn about how they do things because he is always the student. Not only is he a teacher, but a student in every action that he does. You know, including at the very end, the way that I saw that final scene of when he died, when he asked Tom Cruise to help him end his life honorably, he was
Yep.
teaching the soldiers that were once on his side and now fighting against him what it means to live a good and honorable life, and from beginning to the end. And they showed him that respect by bowing to him when he passed. You
That
know,
that was
so
just
you
such
know,
a powerful scene,
yeah,
and like
absolutely,
you said, him as a teacher, his reach extended so far that even the captains of the Imperial Japanese Army, there's one character in particular where it's like, they had so much respect for him that they actually didn't want to fight that fight. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah,
Because they knew the measure of the man that they were going to go up against. And it wasn't, I don't think that it was necessarily a scary proposition for them. I think it was truly just the amount of sheer respect that they had for that character, and there's very few people in my life that I try to emulate, my father being one of them. But if there is a fictional character that I would love to be as close to as possible, I would tend to think that this is the character that I would try and emulate in my everyday life.
Hmm. All right. All right. All right. All right. All right. I like all of these choices, and Ken Watanabe is a fantastic actor. So that's a good way, I think, to end our list of favorite heroes. I excuse me. I want to thank everyone of obviously for all of their awesome choices, and for telling us a little bit about their favorite heroes of all time. Everybody had some really awesome choices on this one, and maybe we can go forward and do favorite characters of all time or something along this vein, because I think this is a great conversation that we can try again sometime. Um, and what hey, we'll see what happens next week, because we have a great episode coming up for our fans next week as well. Anyways, that's gonna close off our favorite heroes of all time episode. As always, I want to remind you guys out there in the internet geekdom to like, share, rate, subscribe, whatever it is that you do on your various podcast platforms. Look us up on Apple Podcasts, look us up on Google Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever your favorite podcasts are sold. Look us up on Instagram at Get Geek Podcast. And as always, we want to thank you guys for joining us. All of our fans out there in the internet geekdom, please, 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 as always, stay geeky, my friend.